Okay, so in the last session, we discussed about class in object-oriented programming. So, few points we learned. Technically, we discussed that class is a program template. Class is a program template. So it comprises of sample logic and data, which you can customize and implement. So technically, class have various behaviors. One is model, another one is entity, another one is blueprint. Like this, class have various behaviors. Class have the model behavior, entity behavior, and the blueprint. Actually, what is difference is, the point is, class is referred as model when it is representing data. When a class is designed to represent data, we call it as model. So class is referred as entity when it is representing business requirements. If a class is representing business requirements, then we call it as entity. And when a class is representing data, then we call it as model. So class is always a blueprint. Class is always a blueprint, as it contains set of data and logic which you can implement at any location. So class is always blueprint, and always it is reused. So, but important is, you should better say class as a program template instead of saying as a blueprint or a model or entity. So all definitions are correct, but above all, program template is best. Now, how do we define a class? Means configuring class. How to configure class? There are two techniques. So one is class declaration. Another one is class expression. Two techniques are there. Generally, how to write a class in JavaScript? We have two techniques: class declaration and class expression. There are two techniques: class declaration and expression. So what is difference is, actually the difference is here. I will show you a simple process of defining class. Suppose we have a simple HTML file. Okay. Here we can configure class like this. We can define a class by using the word class and some name. And in that we can have some members in the class. There is another technique. We create a variable, some category is equal to class, and you define like expression. Here class is not having name. Category is not class name. Here class is anonymous. That means we have a class, but there is no name for class. Such classes we use to keep in the memory and execute them depending on situation. But how to access them from memory? There must be some memory reference name. In the memory reference name, you can store the classes. Just like I told you, functions also can be anonymous. What is advantage of anonymous function? The advantage of anonymous function is you can use them in callbacks. That means a function will execute according to situation. We don't call that. That means if condition matching, one function will execute. If condition not, then another will execute. So if anyone asks what is difference between these two? So first one is class declaration. First one is class declaration. In this technique, what happens is class is called and used. Generally, we call the class and use only when we need it. But in the second situation, the class is loaded into memory, and depending on situation, it will be loaded. It will be accessed and used. When condition matching, one class will load, another class will load. Not only in variable, you can keep in various locations. Like in an array, like in a general variable, you can configure anywhere. So if you want the classes to load according to situation, then you use this class expression. If you want the class to load when you request it, then you define by using class definition. So there are two options, class declaration and class expression. So class declaration defines, class declaration is used. So is used for classes that are requested, according to requirement. Class declaration is used for classes that are requested according to requirement. So syntactically like this, class name, and class expression is used for classes that are loaded according to state and situation. Syntax, some reference name is equal to class and its members. That's how we define class expression and class declaration. So in JavaScript, classes can be declared in two ways. By using the expression and the declaration. Expression and declaration. That is first thing is how we declare a class. Second point is class members. In a class, what you can keep. So technically, as I already told you in the last session, we can't have variables, we can't have functions in class. Reason, because they are immutable. That means they cannot change according to situation. Class cannot have any immutable things. So technically, a class comprises of following members. A class comprises of following members. So A, properties, B, methods, C, accessors, and D, constructor. Only these can be in a class. Anything else other than these not allowed in class. That means if anyone asks a question, can we define a variable in class? So answer is no. You cannot define a variable in class. So if anyone asks like, can we define a function in class? The answer is no. We cannot have a function in class. So if anyone asks why we cannot define variables and functions in class, answer, so they are immutable. Class can contain only mutable members. Class can contain only mutable members. They are immutable. Class can contain only mutable members. People may ask you difference like what is difference between variable and property. Variable and property. Answer already we know. Variables are immutable, properties are mutable. So variables cannot change according to situation, but properties can change. That is the answer already above is there, same, but the question can be in different ways. They can ask like this. Similarly, they can ask what is difference between function and method. Both are same concepts. Difference between function and method. Later you will see some more points, you will understand. So the difference between variable and property, difference between function and method. Answer is above already, right? They are immutable, these are mutable. Already we have the answer for that. Some more we will see now. So technically, what we can have in a class? So technically we can have only the mutable members. So only these are allowed in class: properties, methods, accessors, and constructor. So we will see now detailedly. Remember, anything else other than these four not allowed in class. If anybody is still asking you, can we write this in class? Can we write that in class? Not possible. Class can have only four members. Only four members. Properties, methods, accessor, constructor. That's it. Anything else not allowed. Then here, first we need to understand what are properties. Simple, already we know. Properties are nothing but, so properties are references. Properties are references in class memory. In class memory, where you can store data. Data is stored in properties. Properties are references in class memory where you can store data. So data is stored in properties. So simply data is stored in properties. You can store any type of data in property. That means it can be primitive or it can be non-primitive. Non-primitive. You can store any type of data. In a property, we can store any type of data. Primitive types, non-primitive types. Data is stored in properties. That means here we are defining like this. That means let's go to the class concept here. See, we are defining class as product. Okay. And in this class now, the memory is allocated for the class. That means for this class, some memory is allocated. So this is the class memory. That is the class memory. In this class memory, you can have some references. That means in the class memory, there will be references. These references will have some reference name, like suppose name, and this is having a reference like price, like that. In those references, we can store some data, some TV. We can store some data in the reference. Generally, variables do the work of storing the data. Same work we can do here. So using properties, that means now name and price. Name and price are nothing but these are called as properties. We call them as properties. Data is stored in properties. We can access the properties of that particular class and use them. And in the property, you can keep anything. It can be number, string, boolean, null, undefined, array, object, regular expression, anything. Primitive type or non-primitive type. And how to access these properties? In order to access the properties, you cannot directly access them. So what we have to do is, to access the properties, we have to create an instantiation. We call the process as instantiation. Instantiation is nothing but what we have to do is we have to create an object for that class. Let obj object equal to new and the class name. We have to define the class name. That's it. Now what happens here is new. What is the meaning of new? What is the meaning of new? New is dynamic memory allocating operator. New is a operator. New is dynamic memory allocating operator. That means it is used to allocate memory dynamically for any class. So here it is allocating memory for the class and loads all the members of this class into that memory. That means all the members of that class are loaded into this memory. New is going to allocate this memory. So that means memory is allocated by that new operator. New is not keyword. Some programming languages, new is pronounced as keyword by general learners. New is not a keyword. New comes under the category of operator. Like we learned some special operators, type of, instance of, in, of, void. These are all operators. New is also an operator. What is the purpose of new operator? Allocating memory dynamically for class and loading all the class members in that memory. So that now how to access them? You can access the class members by using this object. Through that object reference, you can access all the members in the class and use them. That is the basic approach. So what we have to do now, how to store data in the class. To store data in the class, we need a property. Property name directly we can give property is equal to, you can put any type of value. It can be string, null, undefined, boolean, anything. Suppose I am defined some name. Okay. Next, we have a property in that we have some price. Similarly, we have property stock in that we have true. We have property like shipped to and is equal to array. So we have some Delhi, some Hyderabad like this. We have some property that is a rating and it is an object which contains, so rate is some 3.4. Count is some 500 like this. These are all properties. In a class, data is stored in properties. Now, how to access them and use them? To access and use them, we cannot directly access like product dot, so name. It's not accessible. You cannot directly use them. It will show error. It's not accessible. So what we have to do is first allocate memory for that class, load the class into memory. For that, we need a operator new. New for which class? Product. This will load that into memory, allocates memory and loads that into memory. After loading the class into memory, how to access that memory? To access that memory, we need a reference. So reference is some TV is equal to, under that reference, this will be loaded. When you are learning technologies like Java, .NET, C++, there you will learn like beside that class, people write parenthesis, which is not required. When we need a parenthesis, I will tell you. Not required, just write the name. That means because which class you want to load into memory, define it. Why you are writing parenthesis? It's not a function. Then why we need that parenthesis, I will tell you. Initially, what happens now? This product class is loaded into memory. And after loading that into memory, so we can access these members in this location. But important is, here one mechanism is working in the background. The mechanism is nothing but the loading of members and allocating memory for this class. That means we are saying that memory is allocated for the class. So memory is allocated for the class. So when memory is allocated for the class, here the point is whether memory allocated for the class should load the members or not into that memory, that is decided by a method inside it. Every class have an internal method which will decide whether to load the members of that class into memory or not. That method is called as, we call it as constructor. Constructor will decide. Every class have a constructor internally. Later constructor we will detailedly discuss. Separate part. We will discuss detailedly about constructor. Every class internally have a method called constructor. This constructor method will decide whether to load the members in the class memory or not. If there is any problem in constructor, then it will not load the members into the class memory. Then this object will not work. That means this TV object that you created, the TV object that you created will not work if the constructor is not loading the members into memory. That means if anybody asks what is the role of a constructor, the constructor role is creating an object. We will detailedly see that, not initializing values, right? Because whenever we ask a question, what is the purpose of constructor? One answer you will get, constructor is used for initializing values from any ordinary programmer. But constructor is not about initializing values. Constructor is about instantiation, creating an object. If constructor have an issue, then object is not created. Creating an object for the class, its complete responsibility is taken by constructor. If constructor have a problem, then the class will not create its object. So you don't need to use it. Automatically constructor is working in the background. You see now here, when I move the mouse onto it, you can see that it is showing that constructor. It is showing that constructor. I am not mentioning about any constructor here, and it is saying that constructor. Without constructor, this cannot happen at all. That means who is responsible for creating an object for class? A class constructor. A class constructor is responsible for creating an object for the class. After creating an object for the class, it will give access to all its members through that object. That means now we can access the members of that class using this object. So suppose if I want to print document.write, so what to print? Name. How do we print? We have to define, what is it? TV.name. We can access that like this. If I want to print so some price, then we have to define price is equal to, because it's an object. How to access the members of object we know already. TV dot price. Like this we define. Suppose we are accessing rating, then we have to define like this. TV dot rating dot rate. Like this we define. Because in that rating, TV object rating is again an object which contains this. This just like an object you have seen. We are accessing the details and presenting the details. This is a general approach. That means this is a simple approach of how do we create a class object and access its members. So how do we create a class? How do we define the members in the class? And how we can access and use them. So first we create an object for the class. Through that object we can access and use it. Here so many more restrictions are there. We will see them. So first part is what properties contain. Properties contain data. So we can store data in properties. So syntactically class and class name. In that we have a property. In that property value. You can add any type of value in that property. So in order to access members of a class, you have to create an instance of class. You have to create an instance of class. Create an instance for class. You have to create an instance for class. How do we create? LET instance is equal to new class name. So new is dynamic memory allocating operator. It is dynamic memory allocating operator. So it allocates memory for the class and loads that. Constructor is responsible for creating an object for class. Constructor is responsible for creating an object for class. Later detailedly we will see about constructor. So initially, in order to access the members of class, we have to create an object for that class. And the responsibility of creating object taken by constructor. Actually, constructor initializes the memory required for class and loads everything into that memory. Now, actually, storing data we can do with variables also. Then why we need properties? What is the advantage? Example I will give here. This is just basic example. Yeah, that is the basic example. Now here the point is properties are mutable. Properties are mutable. You can control the behavior of property using accessors, using accessors. You can control the behavior of property using accessors. So we will see what are accessors here. So how we define and configure. So accessors. First thing is properties, and second one is accessors. The first one is properties. So these are class members. Class have properties, and now class have accessors. What are accessors? See, accessors will provide a fine grained control over properties. Accessors will provide a fine grained control over properties. Say a good control over properties. Grained control means every part of property can be controlled. Every part of property can be controlled. Every concept of property can be controlled. So a fine grained control over properties. So accessors define accessors define the restrictions for reading and writing data into properties. Accessors define the restrictions for reading and writing data into properties. So accessors are used for reading and writing data into properties. At the same time, they can define restrictions. At the same time, they can define restrictions. That means usually accessors are responsible for reading the data and writing the data. At the same time, they can even put restrictions on reading the data and writing the data. So the accessors used in class are one is get, another one is set. These are accessors. People call get as getter and set as setter. People have a habit of calling them as getters and setters. So get accessor is used for reading values. Get accessor is used for reading values from a property. Set accessor is used for writing data into property. Reading values from property or writing the values. Reading and writing the values. Here So many technical points are there, we will see now. That means we can have a good control over the options. Let's design one example for this, how we can handle and configure. A simple example for this. Suppose to handle this exam, first basic syntactical level example I will show you. Then you can design a screen for that. Syntactical level example, how to handle it. See. So we will create a class. First, we will create a class called product. Product is a class. In the product class, we have a property underscore product name. That's an empty property. So what is underscore product name? Underscore, if you remembered in the variables I told you, in the variable naming, I told you what is the meaning of underscore for variable name. What is the meaning of using underscore for variable name? Variable name looks beautiful. Huh? Why we use underscore? For variable name. I given you so many variable naming conventions, right? Underscore is used by developer to indicate that it requires further implementation. It requires further implementation. That means it's not finalized. That means so much restriction need to be defined, right? That means it requires further implementation. We need further implementation. That means our intention is to tell that it's not yet done. We have some more implementation on this. What is that implementation? First, I want some restrictions to keep on this. Generally, without restrictions, how we can read and return it? For that, we use a getter actually. Getter. So get and any reference name for this property. I will give product name. Remember, this is not method. This is not method. This is called accessor. Anything that starts with get or set is an accessor. Now, this product name is used for this particular property as a getter. What is the responsibility of the getter? Every getter is responsible for reading value from property and returning it. Getter is responsible for returning a value. So it's mandatory that a getter should return a value. Mandatory. That means you have to use return. Mandatory return word must be there because the result must be stored in this reference. What it should return? Return the product name property. So same like object we already learned. What are the points about object we learned? How to access the members of an object within object. To access the members of an object within object, we have to use the keyword this. Outside, by using object name. Class also similar. Class members are accessible outside class using its object. Inside class using this. This dot underscore product name it should return that value. So what is the role of this getter? The role of this getter is to return product name. Means read and return whatever. Is there any restriction mentioned? No, there is no restriction mentioned. Can we put restriction for reading? Yes, I will show you. Currently we want restriction for storing value inside it. We want restriction for storing value inside it. So we will use a setter, set, same name, product name. And what this have to do is it should take a new name, and it should set that new name into this dot underscore product name is equal to whatever new name entered. That means what is the role of setter? Setter will take the value and store the value in this property. What is the role of getter? It will read the value from that property and return. Setter stores a value into this property and getter will return. Currently no restrictions, anybody can access and anybody can assign. But I don't want like that. So what I will do here, I will ask username, and username will be entered through a prompt. Enter username. I will ask password, and I will enter password. That's also initially I am using prompt. And I will ask product name. That's also we will ask to enter product name. After entering all these details, if username and password are matching according to our requirements, the person who gives a proper correct username and password, he only can set product name. That means he only can store a product name or change the name. He can put a new name into the product name. Others not allowed. That means others are not allowed to change. Only the person who have correct username and password defined, he only can do that. So then what we are doing here? So we are in setter. Currently there is no restriction. Anybody can set. Here we will put a restriction. If username is matching with some John and both should match, password is matching with John@11, then it should set. Otherwise it should display a message. That means it should display some message. Document.write, it should display a message. You are unauthorized. And detailedly you tell that you are not authorized to set product name. You are not authorized to set product name. So you cannot set product name. If you match your user ID password, you can set it. Otherwise, you are not allowed to set the product name. That's the condition we return. Similarly, we can put condition for reading also. As of now, I'm just giving for writing. Now here we have to create an object for the class let. Some obj is equal to new product. We are creating an object for that class. And here we are defining obj dot product name. This is setter. Through this setter, we will set the name. Name is coming from product name. It is coming from product name prompt. This is what you entered in prompt. We are accessing it and setting it. Now we will write a condition here. So we will define a condition. If obj dot product name, if obj dot product name means it is there. If I am writing like this, it means that it is not undefined, means it is defined. If product name is defined, then print the product name. What we do, document dot write, we will write here product name and whatever the name they entered. How to access? We have to access by using getter. So that means obj dot product name, that is getter. So what is its actual property name? Actual property name is underscore product name. So we are not allowing to use it directly. We are allowing to use it with the help of accessors. So this is getter and this is setter. Here it is setting a value. Here it is getting a value. But we have restrictions for getting and setting. So I refresh here. It's ask username. Username I entered John. Okay. Password. Some wrong password. And okay. Then product name. Product name I entered some Samsung TV. Then it says you are not authorized. Because username password not matching, you can't set the product name. You cannot set the product name. So if I refresh this, username is John, password is John@11 and product name Samsung TV, then it sets it. If username or password not matching, he is not allowed to handle it. That means generally when you go to any shopping cart or anything, any website, you created a shopping cart by yourself. You created a shopping cart. For that, every product they given a ID 1, 2, 3, 4 or unique IDs, and in that product names price is given. You can add the product, you can remove the product, but you cannot change the price. You cannot change the name. Even if it is added into your personal shopping cart, you cannot change the names. You can just read them. They are not allowed to set. Who can change a product name? Who can change the product price? That can be done only by the person who is authorized for that. Means admin like people. Those people only can change the product name. You can just see it. You can just use it. You cannot set. You are not authorized. Currently, I am just asking username and password. But I may ask like username, password, and role. What is your role? Is it admin or a customer or a manager? Depending on role, we will give permissions to them. We will give permissions even for reading value. I just given this logic for setting a value. But this logic is given even for reading the values also. That means everybody cannot see. For example, several websites, they give an option like, if you have seen, suppose they say that this is the cost of this product. So for example, you see which websites, housing websites. Suppose real estate websites will be there. In real estate websites, they will post a that this flat is under sale, right? A flat is under sale, a villa is under sale. Okay, so you can see the photos and everything of that. If you want price, then you cannot see the price of that. So it will say that you log in for price. That means if you want to see the price, log in or send a request to us. Then we will verify your request and then we will show you the price. You cannot see it. But price is there. It is visible, but not for everybody. It is not for everybody. For example, suppose several options, suppose housing.com, some website is there. This is housing.com. So that means you click, suppose you click on some options, you see these are all the options, but certain option, this is just only few options, these are all undergoing projects, their price information is defined and all. Suppose you select any option here, that means you want explore all, right? Here you want to do so many things, that means you see there is an option, rent agreements, legal services, owners, all these options are there. Suppose what you have to do is you want here, let's go here. So I will put here buy. So buy some Hyderabad, some location, some Amir Pet, something like this. So I given something, some properties they will show you here. And very important is some prices are given here, some prices are given here. But what they do is for some products, means some products, they don't give the price here. They will simply block the price. So some will be there. Now what you do is, if you want the information for that, you have to click on that and you have to request for price. So new projects and all, they will be like that. Currently it is just showing so price, but some will be there where you click a button, request price, then only the price request will come. It will not display to everybody, you have to log in. When log in, then only it will show. That means lot of things will be like that. For example, you see bike, cars websites, they will not show the price of the car until or unless you select location and you say I want on road price, then they will show you on road price for that, depending on the which location you select. That means it will be changing according to the location and the situation. These all things are very important. That means we have restriction not only to set the value, we have restriction even to get the value. Can we display this to everybody? So here also we can put a restriction for that. So I just given user ID password, but usually it will be user ID, password, role, so many things we will ask, and all matching, then we will allow. This is the basic concept of syntactical example. It's a syntactical example. So first I will give a syntax. We have to define property name, and we need a getter. What this getter property, and what it will do, it will return this dot underscore property name. And we have a setter. That setter will take new name and it will set that. So this dot underscore property name is equal to new name. We need to define that getter and setter. So how do we define the properties and configure them? So what is the purpose of accessors? The purpose of accessors is to store values into a property and to read value from the property. These are getter and setters. One example is this one. Let me copy this and define. You can configure in several ways. That means you can ask here, suppose where role is prompt. Username password may be correct, but if role is enter role. So if role is not admin, you cannot handle. That means here we are using another one is role. If role is admin, then only he can set a value. That means username should match, password should match, and role should match. So suppose here username is matching. So John. Password is matching John@11. But role is suppose manager. So manager is product name. So Nike Casuals. And it is not authorized. We can put a detailed message, means why it is not authorized. So here I will put a detailed message here. Let's keep a backtick. So here we will define. So your role is whatever role they entered. Your role is what your role entered. And you are not authorized. Only admin can change product name. This detailed message we are giving. Now what happens is here, so I will just keep here another option, username. So and put so hello username. Now you see here I am defining some John and some password John@11. And here I entered the role as some manager. And it says product name, some Samsung TV. And it says, hello, John, your role is manager and you are not authorized. Only admin can change product name. A detailed information we are displaying accordingly. And if he logs in as admin, actually in this entire hierarchy, bet means generally what is the best one is first we should ask to enter the product name, then all these details, right? When user tries to enter the product name, then all these details, that will be better. Product name I am entering Samsung TV. Okay, then it will ask, okay, enter your credentials. So username is John and password is John@11. Role is admin. Admin is the role. Then your role is admin. Here capitalization issues also will be there because you are comparing with the lowercase admin. You know that for that we have to handle conversion of capital letters. So we have product name. Okay. We have username. So, okay. We have password John@11 and role is admin and it will get that and display. These are the basic details how we can convert and configure. This is general things. So this is one simple example how we can use. We will put in one real world example. For that we need to learn some more authentications how to handle, but this is general, very commonly used thing. So don't allow everybody to manage the details. You can put restrictions. So you have two things now. In the class you have learned properties and you have learned accessors. Next important, methods. So actually methods define the actions to perform. Methods define the actions to perform. what action to perform, that is defined by method. So all method specifications are similar to functions. All method specifications are similar to functions. That means method name, method declaration, method parameters, method return type, arrow methods, everything same. Everything same. Single parameter, multiple parameters written. Only the point is you will not use the word function. Right? That's it. So rest of all things are same like functions. Now the question answer which already I given. What is difference between a method and function? Difference between a method and functions. Functions are immutable. Methods are mutable. But in higher level, more higher level, in computer technologies, there are more concepts about methods. Actually, generally, in computing technologies, if they may ask like, what is difference between functions, methods, and procedures? Functions, methods, and procedures. Because in computer programming, actions are defined with methods, functions, and procedures. Actions are defined in methods, functions, and procedures. Then obviously this becomes a good question, right? What is the difference between a method and a function and a procedure? All are used for defining actions. All are used for defining actions. Then what is difference between function, method, and procedure is actually, so the answer for this is, first I will show you a example point here. Suppose you are learning some technologies like, I will give you something like, in JavaScript you have these two. Suppose you are learning some technologies like Oracle or SQL Server databases. In this Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, various databases are there. In these databases, if you want a certain functionality to use again and again, we create a stored procedure. We create a stored procedure. This stored procedure contains the actions like, this stored procedure contains the actions like, so select star from table name. Like this, we create stored procedures. So whenever you are accessing them, it will get that and it will display. That means we use stored procedures. Now the question is, why you call stored procedure? It is like a method. It is like a function. It is like a function. Then why you call it as a stored procedure? Procedure. Why you call as a procedure? All look same. They contain actions to perform. Then why different names? Why it is called procedure? Why it is called a method, or why it is called a function? Difference is actually functions. Technically, functions always intended to return value. Functions are always intended to return value. That means if you want to use some functionality, that functionality should store the result also, then better you use a function. But you want some functionality that need not to store result, just do the work, then we define methods. Methods not intended to return value. They are not intended to return value. Functions are always intended to return value. But procedure, important is, procedure have, it may or may not return value. That means it have the behavior of method and function. For example, in this Oracle MySQL databases, we use stored procedure. Suppose in the stored procedure, we return a command called select star from table. It is used to read all the records from table and return. If there are no records, will it return error? If there are no records, will it return error? It will not return error. It will not do anything. If there are records, it will return. If there are no records, it will not do anything. That means it is changing the behavior in such a way that it can return the values and it can discard the value. That means, remember, memory is allocated for it only when value is returning. The memory will be discarded. So if value is not returning, that's very good. That means in a method or a function, memory is always allocated. But procedure, memory will be allocated only when data is coming. If not coming, it's not allocated. Very good. So methods and functions can't do that. Methods and functions can't do that. That is the reason databases call them as stored procedures. Stored procedures will decide whether to save the values or not. Depending on situation, they can change. If the values are coming, they will allocate memory. If values are not coming, they will not allocate memory. That's very good. That is why you don't have procedures. Procedures are not possible in other programming languages, Java, .NET, PHP, or JavaScript. We don't have procedures. We have either functions, means either memory allocated or discarded. You cannot have a method which can change its behavior. That is possible in databases. That is why they call them as stored. Actually, procedures are not only database. Some procedure-oriented languages are there. In those languages, this is possible. Earlier, we used to have a language called VB, Visual Basic, VC++, Visual C++. Even today, we use them. So, but they are old now. But still, several applications are in VB, VC++. We have technologies like VPascal. We have technologies like Visual Fox Pro. These are used even today, also used in various occasions, but they are old now. But these are all procedure based. That means good that they will allocate memory if data is returning. If data is not returning, it will never allocate the memory. But method always discards. That means methods are always what type? Void. Functions always return. But in JavaScript, that is the point. You have either functions or you have methods. You don't have procedures. Procedures are not there. So that is the difference between these three options. That means functions always intended to return value. Methods always intended to discard the return value. What is meant by discarding return value, we already know. Procedure changes according to situation. It can discard memory or allocate memory according to, it can discard memory or allocate memory according to return value. If return value is there, then it will allocate memory. If return value is not there, then it will discard the memory. That is actually the option. So we don't have procedures here. We are having functions, we are having methods. In a class, you cannot have function. In a class, you can have only procedure, methods. And methods all are similar, same like how you done in your general functions concept. That means what we do here now, methods can do both works here. You see, suppose here we are configuring, means just the method work, what it can do. So here we have where, not where, just we put a class product. In that we have name is equal to some name. We have price is equal to some price. And we have quantity, so is equal to some quantity. We have total is a method. This total method can return this dot quantity into this dot price. Now there is another method, print. This print is a void method. It can print only the details, same like object you have done. Same like object, how you configured. In object also same technique we have followed. So now total and print are methods. These are methods. And these are properties. And how to access them, we know that. So let object is equal to new product, and through that object we can access the name, we can access the method print, and we can define. All rest of things are same like how you done with an object. That's the reason, if you remembered, we discussed that object is also called as a pseudo class. If you remember that sentence I told you, pseudo class, that means it will have class like behavior, but it's not a class. So the class have more features, and in that you have seen how we can define the methods and how we can define the, this is example, just example, methods and properties and access. And one more very important in the class now is constructor, that we will see tomorrow, right? In the class, one more concept important, constructor. What is constructor and how it works? Then we can go into other OOP concepts, inheritance, polymorphism, what they are, how they are handled, how they are useful for handling various situations in development. That we will see in next session. Tomorrow we will see that, okay?